Bula. Good morning. Hi, everyone. I think we are about to start. Thank you, everybody, for come and join this beautiful morning. And it's really my privilege to be in this beautiful country, Fiji. And my name is Koko Tang. I'm the founder of Color for Earth and also the board member of GSTC. So before we dive into this interesting topic, we talk about something really close to our heart, the ocean and coastal development. But I would like to inform you that we just launched our Snap site this year. So it's very exciting. You can actually capture the highlights of the session and then real-time transcript generated from Snap site, our little AI tool. So if you have downloaded VFairs, so it's right in your app, and you can just select our room, and then you can access to that. And also, yes, and also we are introducing our, like the past conferences we have for GSTC, we always use Slido to collect the questions. So if you can enter into www.slido.com or scan this barcode here and select our room, and you can ask questions to any of our speakers today. So I will pick up your questions. At the end of the session, we have a Q&A session. Please do submit your questions and type in your questions. Any question will be welcomed. So, okay, I'm going to introduce our panelists later, but yes. Thank you. Ooh. Yeah. So now, back to the topic about the ocean. Tourism and the sea has inseparable connection, but how we travel and how we use those fragile places and how our hotels are built and managed will be actually decide the fate of our coastal community, our ecosystem, and sustainability of our entire industry. Let's be very honest, we all want to go to the sea. Globally, 50% of the tourism happens along the coastal line. By 2030, marine and coastal tourism will make up over a quarter of the world blue economy, generating over $1.1 trillion money. And here's a catch. The enormous growth also brings enormous responsibility. Are we truly ready to manage this boom without destroying the places that attract travelers at the very first place? So let's start with pollution. Have you ever seen a beautiful beach full of the plastic floating on the water? It's really sad and heartbreaking, but it's still happening. In some destinations, untreated wastewater will be discharged directly into the sea. And we can see the plastic from shampoo bottle and to the plastic straws all ended up the sea, but it didn't go away. Come back to it chokes the wildlife and entered into the food chain, and it kills the ability that guests are paying to experience. And also ecological damage. And every year, about 350 million tourists visit the coastal reefs. That's huge. But what they left behind, we're talking about sunscreen that causes coral bleaching, snorkeling accidentally damaging the live corals, and both disrupting fragile marine system. Even the noise from frequent boat traffic messes around with whales and dolphins who rely on the sound system to survive. We must talk about construction. So to build one beach resort, we've seen mangrove bulldozed and sea turtle nesting site destroyed. So all in the name of development. But what even more shocking, less than 25% of tourism companies even acknowledge their impact on marine biodiversity. And how can we even fix the things we refuse to see? We can do better, and we must do. Now let's talk about over-tourism. When too many people go to one single place, the system cracks. But I checked with the taxi driver when on the way to this resort, and then is over-tourism a problem here? The answer is no, and I'm happy to hear that. But I will leave that to you, our audience, to judge on that as well. Okay, so and finally, we want to talk about the money, because You think that with the thriving tourism, the local community will thrive, but the truth is in many destinations, more than half of tourism income leak out of the local community. And in some places, up to 80% of tourist spend never reaches local hands. So when the community thrives, tourism thrives, we also need to think about economic leakage at the same time. But here's the good news, changes are coming. So some of our travelers and the tourists are ready to make more sustainable travel choices. And also, the global goal is pretty straightforward. According to the Global Biodiversity Framework, we're aiming to what's called 30 by 30. That means protect at least 30% of land and inland waters and 30% of the coastal and marine areas around the world by 2030. But protection alone isn't enough. We need transformation. Hospitality must lead by reducing emission, managing waste, sourcing locally, hiring inclusively, and engaging communities. So, I'm incredibly proud to have here our fellow changemakers from Fiji, Phuket, Singapore, and WWF. They might have the answers to the questions we just raised. So I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists today, Ms. Amy Breckon, Senior Program Officer, Coastal Tourism Development, WWF. Welcome, Amy. And Mr. Kelly Yoong, Divisional Director, Corporate Planning, Sentosa Development Corporation. Hi, Kelly. And Ms. Litia Mario, Executive Officer, Fiji Hotel and Tourism Association. Welcome, Litia. And Mr. Bhummikitti Ruktaengam, President of Sustainable Tourism Development Foundation from Phuket. Thank you very much. So let's firstly hear what Amy has to say. Amy, now, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here with you to share a little bit about how the WWF US Oceans team is engaging in the coastal tourism sector. By way of a very quick self-introduction, I was actually born and raised in the state of Maine in the United States, whose motto is actually vacation land. So much of the first half of my life was spent on a very small island, and I got my start really in environmental work because of my connection to nature and the Maine experience that people come to be with. So, and finally, I'll admit that I'm really a lot more comfortable leading volunteers in a small tin boat than I am standing on a stage. So bear with me. So before I dive into the strategy we're advancing, and a lot of this I feel like is redundant by this point in the conference, but I wanted to reflect on Fiji and its beauty and the benefits that it provides. This picture in the middle is of the Hilton Resort just down the road where some of you may be staying. And whether you're living or traveling near coastlines for vacation, coastal and ocean ecosystems provide value to you and to businesses that operate in these environments. So here in Fiji, there's the wonderful snorkeling and diving. I was privileged to get to do that on Monday. Before the conference, it was such a great start to this conference to actually see what we're talking about here with the Great Sea Reef being the third largest barrier reef system in the world. It provides food and livelihoods and protection for Fijian communities. Mangroves also mitigate storm protection and attenuate wave energy to protect beaches that we like to enjoy. And some properties just like this one, where you can see the reef come out in front of the beach that protects that beach from eroding. Those same reefs provide seafood, not just for tourists, but for coastal communities that fish these waters. And beaches in Fiji are nesting grounds for highly migratory sea turtles, species like this critically endangered hawksbill turtle. So World Wildlife Fund, if you're not familiar, is a global organization with a network in over 100 countries around the world. We deliver innovative solutions that protect communities, wildlife, and the places in which they live. And I'm pleased to be joined by a number of my colleagues at this conference from the US and from the Pacific Network office here based in Suva. So we believe that when oceans thrive, the planet thrives. Societies are more prosperous and the world is more peaceful. We call these our 4 Ps, and they are sometimes a tongue twister. We're working in 4 sectors to achieve our goals: seafood, marine renewables, shipping, and coastal tourism and development. So I wanted to bring up nature positive. It's a term I haven't heard too much during the time at the conference, so just to focus on this graph to define it a little bit. It was developed as part of the Global Biodiversity Framework in response to the trajectory of biodiversity loss that's shown on the left-hand side of this graph. And it targets halting and reversing this trend by 2030 with the goal of full recovery by 2050. The easier way of saying that is that we want more biodiversity and nature in the future than we have today. Could have cut to the chase with that, I suppose, but for those of you that like graphs. And so we've based our approach for coastal tourism, thank you very much, on this foundational report, the Nature Positive Ocean Pathways report, which was published in June alongside the UN Ocean Conference. And it answers calls we've been hearing from industry leaders for science-based and practical guidance for some years now to credibly contribute to halting and reversing biodiversity loss and the nature positive global goal. So this report supports private sector to assess nature-related risks, impacts, and opportunities, and really take concrete steps toward more nature positive outcomes for the planet and for their businesses. And this graphic, this sort of infographic, you can't really probably read it, but gives you a sense of some of the activities that are described in more detail in the sector chapters in the report. Things like avoiding conversion of natural habitats, using wildlife-friendly lighting to reduce wildlife disturbances, and creating responsible nature-based guest experiences. Also conducting robust ecosystem-based marine spatial planning processes. So detailed chapters within, sorry, I don't know how to go backwards. In the report are actually based around the AR3T hierarchy, which stands for avoid, reduce, restore, regenerate, and transform. And believe it or not, and I think this is really relevant, our team is actually already starting to write the next version of the report that will really focus on measurement, as I know that's a big topic on everyone's minds. And alongside that measurement work will be to really bring in the most useful case studies so that we can be making the business case in a much more real world way for C-suite folks who need to be convinced. So we've heard throughout this conference that tourism holds great promise as an agent for change because of the strong link between the business models and healthy ecosystems they rely on, and communities as well, and the harm that it can also cause if not done well. So let's just start here. I think most of these statistics have been shared before. One thing, though, I do want to mention is that reflecting on this conference as it relates to other events that I've been to and conversations that I've been in with large companies, we all understand these statistics, the top economic contributor, projected to be the largest ocean economy, the opportunity to engage with women in economic empowerment given how many women are employed in the sector. It is not necessarily on the minds, oceans and coasts are not necessarily on the minds of others. I have conversations with large companies a lot of times, and they don't see the connection to biodiversity, nature, and coasts and the benefits they're providing. So this is how we walk through it with them. This sort of walks through what we talked about in our previous example of the flood protection benefits that mangroves and coral reefs provide, the primary production for lots of commercial fisheries and other charismatic species that are enjoyed by marine-bound tourists. Mangroves, of course, provide 3 to 5 more times carbon sequestration than terrestrial forests, among many other ecosystem services that they provide. And of course, livelihood benefits are key. And then, of course, on the flip side, land development, poorly planned, can undercut all those great services. Overdevelopment can reduce that flood protection, biodiversity, commercially available species, et cetera. All those things. So we need to be making the business case strong for corporate action. And of course, there's a strong case to make. The ocean enables robust economic activity and the health of global financial markets to the tune of 24 trillion. And continued business as usual puts a huge amount of that value at risk. 2/3 of globally listed companies that are directly or indirectly exposed to these risks. And for coastal tourism, this is the value of that risk. Some references here. So what are we doing to work on this? And we see this sort of as the untapped opportunities of the tourism sector to contribute to our goals for positive impact. Our overall goal is to work both at the global scale, working with companies to adopt rigorous commitments and targets as guided by the Nature Positive Ocean Pathways recommendations and the Science-Based Targets for Nature, working with partners to develop libraries of case studies, but also looking at the destination level. We're looking to advance impact at scale through a destination stewardship approach that includes regional seafood supply initiatives and guiding partners toward footprint-relevant seascape scale conservation investments. And this strategy really, I should say, is in its early stage of development, looking for kind of places to touch down, but we are just getting started. So we saw an opportunity to use the GSTC destination assessment process as a framework to build on in our priority places. WWF has partnered with GSTC to do destination assessments previously in the past, and we've learned a lot from those experiences, and also have made a lot of progress in other areas since then. And so what we want to do is kind of put some of these things together to really come up with a land seascape scale approach that's centered in stakeholder-driven processes and recognizes the complexity of tourism value chain, and especially the range of scale of operations from small-scale ecotourism to larger-scale tourism, and just highlighting the importance of landscape scale. When we think about transformation and what's needed and the significant change we need to get to the nature positive goal, we really think about that land seascape scale approach. So probably too many words on this slide, and it didn't translate all that well, but that's okay. So we combined our practices in climate resilience action planning along with our nature positive restoration and regeneration pathways and the GSTC destination assessment process criteria. And you can see the steps here in the process that involve kind of ground truthing in place and careful stakeholder engagement across sectors. Ultimately producing a risk and vulnerability assessment, collaboratively generated, prioritized solutions and action plans to strengthen the stewardship of the destination. So it's also our intent that this would incorporate other initiatives like regional tourism, sustainable seafood projects, eco-tour region development, and corporate target setting. And not to forget seascape scale conservation investment. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to connecting. I can't, I was standing not so I could see the time. Sorry, everybody. Did I go way over?
Beloved Vinaka, everyone. Thanks, Koko, and thanks, Amy. I may not have all the answers, right? But let's have a good discussion, and I will share the Sentosa story on our sustainability journey. Before I start, just like to introduce Sentosa. Sentosa is actually a southern island, which is actually the south of Singapore. So what you see here is the whole Sentosa island is all 500 hectares. And before I do that, I just want to go back to share a story about one of the founding fathers and the late Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, when he has a vision of how Sentosa as an island destination needs to be developed. He spoke about it as the island must be a retreat that allows people to get away from the hustle and bustle of the urban and city life. And mind you, that was more than 50 years ago. And with that vision in mind, what we've done is we've developed Sentosa into both an island playground and also a sanctuary in a global city. You realize that we have more than 200 businesses on the island. We have 19 hotels, 30 attractions, and we receive about close to 17 million. Last year, we did about 16.9 million of visitors on an annual basis. That generated about the 1.4 billion of tourism receipts for just purely from the Sentosa Island. And we actually provide employment for 15,000 workers. But with all these economic benefits come the delicate balance of how we preserve the islandness and the sanctuary aspect of the entire Sentosa island, you realize that when you look at the whole map, more than 50% of the island is covered with greenery. And we have more than 850 flora and fauna species on the island. And we do have 10% of the total Singapore heritage trees on the island as well. And this is very akin to what Singapore has in mind. I allude back to the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew when he spoke about his vision. He really actually promulgated how we actually develop a country even before sustainability came into fore. He talked about water resilience. So we implemented a new water initiative whereby every drop of water counts. So today, 40% of the water actually comes from recycled water. That fuels about 170 million gallons per day. We have other initiatives such as greening the entire Singapore city. We inject greenery in the urban built environment as well. And that's what we do in Sentosa. When we look at new developments, we require them to actually put in green plot ratio, which is actually 50% more than what is on the mainland as well. And hence, you can see that we have more than 50% of the greenery on the island as well. So when we do that, we formalize a sustainability roadmap in 2021. We set ourselves two ambitious targets. First is to become a carbon neutral scene by 2030. And second, to be a globally recognized sustainable destination. And it has bore fruits so far. So we have begun the work. So what we have done is we have solarized all the rooftop over 46 locations on the island itself. So what it means, it generates about 5.2 megawatt peak, and that is enough to power about 100,000 room nights on an annual basis. We have also greened our transportation options on the island. What we also done is actually we have made a commitment to make sure 100% of the hotel rooms are certified sustainable by the end of this year. Now, when we look at sustainability, we look at it across three pillars: how we conserve, enhance, and also grow the community as well. Let me speak a little bit about how we conserve. Sentosa is a very unique blend of the coastal environment, the nature environment, and also heritage. So on Sentosa itself, there's 3 colonial forts during the wartime and 1 battery. So here's actually Fort Siloso on the top left-hand corner. So it was gazetted as the 74th monument in 2022. And we have Imbiah Battery here as well. And I think one of the key things that I want to highlight is actually Tanjung Rimau. You can see that on the middle top, and also the coastal trail. And that is actually where a lot of the biodiversity happens. So we work very closely with the nature groups, with the universities that allow researcher students to come in to study the biodiversity environment as well. We also have introduced the Sentosa Nature Discovery. Recently, we just refreshed what we have on the exhibit, and that allows the community to come in to study and understand what the island actually offers in terms of biodiversity. And also we have walks and trails along the island to allow visitors to experience the island themselves. On enhancing, right, what we do is actually we take a lot of the elements of what we have already, and we build around those elements to make sure we preserve the green and the blue of the Sentosa. You see Capella. When you observe Capella, the heritage building itself is actually on the bottom area. What the developer has done is actually they built around it and they preserved the greenery around it. So it's become a top hotel in Sentosa. We have Barracks Hotel, which used to be a barrack, right? But what they have done is actually they have integrated tours and stories about the barracks as well. There is this tour that's conducted by veterans who were around when this whole property was still a barracks. And that really comes alive when we engage the visitors on the historical stories about the property itself. I have 2 other examples. We have Tiny Homes, which is actually at the southern islands of Sentosa. And this is actually a low carbon attractions, right, and zero waste approach to enjoying and going back to nature, right, and enjoy the environment. We also have the edible garden. In fact, we have edible gardens across all the hotels in Sentosa, and this is one example, Sofitel. So the visitors, when they stay in the hotel, they can actually experience, and the hotel will actually tell the story about the farm-to-table approach in how they develop their cuisine. And I want to allude to the most important part. Over the last 2 days, we heard about community, about partnerships, about coming together. And this is actually one major aspect in actually how we grow. We look at it from the business standpoint, right? So we have established a Sentosa carbon neutral network, and that brings together all the different businesses onto Sentosa that are responsible for the majority of the carbon emissions. So what we have here, we started with 17 and we grew to 32. You realize that we have 200 businesses, but we only have about 30 partners over here. But these partners are responsible for 95% of the carbon emissions. So it's important and it's imperative that they are part of the common language and part of the goals that we have set for ourselves for 2030. And that particular forum, when they come together, is a network of leadership and advocacy as well. And I think most importantly is about the community of practice, sharing successful stories of how they've implemented certain initiatives. For example, the hotels. Collectively, we have removed more than 2 million plastic bottles from the rooms. And that's a major achievement because when we first launched the disposable playbooks in collaboration with WWF, when we wrote that, there was a lot of pushback, right? Because it's so easy and so convenient to actually just put plastic bottles in the room and throw it away. So that requires a major shift and mindset change. And that's where going through and working through the Sentosa Carbon Neutral Network actually achieve the result. The second is actually growing our people. And it's not just the Sentosa Development Corporation staff, but all the staff that works on the island. We actually launched one step. It stands for One Sentosa Transformation and Equipping Platform, focused on 3 areas. The first and foremost is actually very obvious, training people on sustainability. But aside from sustainability, we realize there are 2 other areas that's just as important. The second is actually customer experience. How do we tell a very compelling stories and we bring across the experience and make the stories come alive. And the third is data and AI. With the advent of the digital transformation across many different sectors, tourism is no different from that. How we can use generative AI to tell the same story, but in a different manner to different audiences. And that's what we want to equip everyone on Sentosa to do so. And last but not least is how we engage our community. This is an example of one of the major events we held on Sentosa. This is actually the WWF Earth Hour, where we actually engage all the property on the island to switch off the light, to remind people the importance of conserving the usage of electricity and to be an ally of the environment. We have many other community engagement. If you're at the GSTC conference in 2024, you recognize the Sustainability Showcase. What we have done is to actually recycle the Sustainability Showcase into a mobile traveling showcase, and we bring that to all the schools. We intend to bring that to the schools in Singapore, and we really want to engage our future visitors, our future population from young. So these are many other initiatives that we looked at. We have Sentosa Cares, where we actually bring forth and make sure people from less privileged background or people with disability come together on a week-long festival with us. We bring them to enjoy the attractions on the island. We rally the whole community on the island and also the external party to come and make sure we actually looked at the social and inclusivity part of sustainability as well. And with this, I want to leave you with what I call the 3 A's, right, of our sustainability journey. The first is about the attitudes of the business, the attitudes of the staff, the attitudes of the people, right? The second is the approach on how we engage the community together to make sure the journey is a concerted effort. And the last is actually to make sure that everyone becomes an ally of the environment where we live in and not an adversary to the environment. And with this, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before we invite Litia on the stage, please remind a warm reminder that you can still use Slido to type in the questions if you have any. And I do see some very good ones coming up already. Litia, please. Thank you.
Mulvanak, everyone. I think the coldness of the room and the good morning tea has made a really bad environment for a long, boring presentation. So before I start, if I could just ask all of you just to stand up for a little while so that I know you're all awake while I give you some valuable information. Shake it off. Yeah? Okay, have a seat. I've got about 75 slides. Bulvinak, everyone. I'm here from the Fiji Hotel and Tourism Association. We are not an NTO, we are a membership organization, and we offer our members services to support them in their operational needs. And part, to help us to better service our members, we have to understand how they operate. Kelly did a wonderful presentation of a very highly developed island community in Sentosa, and if you had attended Jenny's presentation yesterday, you would have heard about how she does sustainability on a very small scale in a little resort on a remote island. What I'd like to do for you today is to bring you some lessons that we've had from medium-sized islands, island resorts. So we have the Mamanuca Islands here in Fiji, and you can actually catch a boat from Port Denarau and go out to those islands. And these are medium-sized resorts. Some have been around for over 50 years. And so I'd just like to share with you some of the lessons that they've learned and what's worked and what hasn't. So the first lesson is to build with the island in mind. When resorts started, they would use what was readily available. There's one resort that was an old copper plantation, so when they started, they used the coconut logs from that. Now, in terms of when they're looking at construction or renovation, they have to look at materials that not only are eco-friendly, but are durable and resilient for the coastal environment. When you plan infrastructure for an island resort, you have to allocate space for both guest-facing amenities and also infrastructure. And we're talking about solar, sewage, well, not necessarily just solar, but any energy generation plants, sewage treatment plants, and water supply and treatment. So those considerations need to be taken into account when looking at building on an island, because you do have to generate all of that yourself and deal with the waste management yourself most of the time. The reuse of material wherever possible. So when construction or renovation is happening on an island, a lot of the construction waste gets generated as well. And so looking at ways that those can be repurposed. Roofing irons that are coming off can be used for sheds, for pig pens for the local community. That has happened in the past. One of the examples of Muscat Cove was they replaced their timber louvers recently, and those have all been put in storage to be reused in various ways, one of which is chopping boards. So getting a bit innovative in terms of how you can repurpose materials rather than produce waste. What has evolved over the years is that they're now avoiding burying or burning waste because they recognize the impact that has on the ecosystems that they work in. Managing resources proactively. So again, in an island system, you have to manage your water supply. You're not connected to the mainland that you're able to pipe in fresh water. And most island resorts they would rely on a combination of borehole water or rainwater harvesting. And I guess previously that has been able to be sustained in terms of being adequate supply. In recent years, because the demand has increased, and definitely post-COVID, our low season has not been as low as before. And so desalination plants are also something that has been put in place. Desalination plants and also reusing grey water in terms of that for irrigation and toilet flushing. Again, if for older resorts, this has also meant that they are retrofitting some plumbing so that they're able to feed that grey water into the system to be used for your toilets. Renewable energy. Diesel has been the mainstay of island power generation for years and years and years. Only recently in Fiji has solar become an option that is, one, affordable and accessible, and with the technology now being able to be confident in investing in solar that will suit your needs, that will last in an island environment, that is becoming something that the island resorts are investing in. One of the things that is overlooked is just how much land you need for a solar farm to power a medium-sized resort. For a small, I guess, eco-lodge kind of operation, you could probably put some solar panels up on your roof, and that would be adequate. But for a medium-sized operation that has all the regular guest amenities as a mainland resort, you're looking at a sizable portion of land, and that is some consideration that needs to be made by island resorts when they're looking at that. On-site waste processing. As you do, you generate some green waste from your landscaping and whatnot. So island resorts have invested in wood chippers to process this waste, and that is mulched and composted and used around the resort. Food waste. I think for Fiji, we're quite blessed in terms of where these island resorts are placed. They usually have a local community that is close by. And so that food waste is redirected to those local communities to be used as food for pig farms. So, and then, maybe you eat the pigs. And so it's a nice little circular economy you have going on in your island. For Fiji, recycling options are very limited, or in a lot of cases, it's absent. And so island resorts have had to get creative in this space in terms of, I guess, making sure that they're reducing waste at source. So working with suppliers to say no to plastic packaging. One of the funniest success stories that we've had is the packaging for toilet paper going out to resorts. And so one of the major suppliers here, they have packs of 4 toilet rolls, and that's in a little plastic package. And then they put a whole lot of those together to make 72 rolls, and then they double bag them in these big plastic bags, and they ship them out. And in a conversation with them last year, they were saying, well, the resorts, they don't want the plastic anymore. And so what the manufacturer had to do was he had to invest in a cardboard box that would fit those, and so now that's what they've had to do in terms of the response by the resorts to say, look, we can't handle this waste, and so that's how it's being shipped out now. And those cardboard boxes are something that the island resorts are able to manage in terms of waste, putting them through the chipper or sending them back to be recycled. Repurposing. One of the good examples we got was that food-grade plastic is one of the best quality plastics that island resorts can find. And so big oil drums are being repurposed as planting pots, for instance. So I do see that my time is up. This is the last bit, and I'll go through this quickly. In your sustainability efforts for island communities, integrating that into the guest experience is also important. And one of the ways that they have done it is in their restoration and reforestation efforts to include that in the guest experience. And they've included that by weaving that into the story of the island and making them understand why restoration and reforestation actually enhances the guest experience. Again, just at the bottom, working with suppliers to reduce waste, looking at different packaging options, buying in bulk. And just to finish off the key takeaways, I think what I would like to just probably focus on is the last one. It's a continuous process of innovation, adaptation, and collaboration. And the key word there I probably want you to focus on is collaboration. It's having the conversations with each other here and also just with your guests, even with your peers, so that you can learn what people are doing, what has worked for them, what might work for you, or even you giving somebody else advice so that we can work out what we can do better and and move along together in the sustainable journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Litia. Thank you very much. So, BK, please, you have the floor.
Bula Sawadee Krap. I'm representing Phuket, Thailand. I'd like to share not me the answer that Koko has been raising initially, but maybe some journeys that we actually share to listen to all of you. Just give my pictures, okay? Well, Phuket, it's very tiny islands, sit in the Andaman Ocean. You can find Phuket in the map. But it is this Phuket during the COVID hit. 95% of the economic came from tourism. Once COVID hit us, it's left us with desperate and less hope. So that's why we try to come back with the program called Phuket Sandbox, which is successfully done. And again, the numbers of the tourism, we believe that if we do the tourism right, it will share and will drive the destination to SDG 2030. This is the numbers of Phuket, very latest numbers. From Jan to July this year, we actually comparing to what we have in 2019, we actually almost the same numbers already. The only concern to me, if you put the green box and the blue box. Green box means these are our customers who are very much environmental concern. And the blue box means they are getting more concerned in this area, like Korea, Israel, and Singapore, for example. July alone, you can see that our customers' perspective has remained the same. We have Australia, which is very much environmental concern, UK, Germany, France, and USA, while we have Israel, Korea, and Singapore in the top 15. That represents something for us. If we want to do good for our customer and do good for ourselves, we need to really do it now, act it now. That's why we have a question that tourism to Phuket, are we thriving or are we just surviving? That's two different meanings on doing that. Thriving means due to the better business with the better ecosystem, but surviving means you just make the end meets. So we want to thrive in business, tourism business. That's why we decide to do a few things. We don't want to see this. Phuket has been ranked a couple of years ago, one of the overcrowded destinations, along with few famous tourist destinations in the world. We don't want to be part of that. We don't want to be stepped into over-tourism. That's why we really, stop a little bit, pause a little bit, and think about our future. That's why we state the foresight of 2030 that the first one, we want to be carbon neutrality by 2050 because our national commitment is there. We want to be net zero in 2065. We want to be smart and resilient city, which is a key for sustainability, and we want to be so-called sustainable tourism destination. We said 2030 because, life too short, you can wait 2050 to see that, okay? And again, by doing so, we decide the 4 pillars of Phuket sustainable development. And we want to shift the mindset from climate mitigation to climate adaptations. It's too late now to mitigate it. I think we all have to adapt to it. The rain bomb, the flood, for example. That's why we put 4 pillars. The first one is environmental protections and climate resilience. The second is community empowerment and cultural preservations. The third is sustainable infrastructures and smart urban planning. And the last one is responsible tourism governance and policy implication. This is our journey. First, we need to understand where we are now. So we asked GSTC to conduct what's so-called GSTC destination assessment to understand what we are currently in the positions. So Dr. Kang with Tiffany and the team were there to do all the assessments. And now we know the score, but we're not going to tell you how much score we have, okay? It's very secret. But it is a good start for us to understand the journey. Otherwise we would do something that we really don't know the checklist and the pathway. Having that report giving us a very good pathway and a good start to do the journey. And then we talk to the governor, we talk to the local administrative on the area that we highlight as red. It is very urgent to tackle. So hopefully in the next 2 years, we will do again and we get a higher score and so-called then we become sustainable tourism destinations globally. Because Phuket is very big and it's islands, so part of Phuket actually that people always go to is Old Town. So we do the Old Town as a prototype to prove our theory. So we have Phuket Old Town carbon neutrality 2030s. With doing so, we invest the waste organic composter to install in the Old Town. Again, in Phuket we have 40% waste organic, mixed with the total waste. The total waste in Phuket is huge. At 40% organic waste is a way to make it better instead of go to incinerators or landfill. So that's why we install the first one, the waste organic composter in the Old Town. Then we also drive that instead of having the car, we should have the EV bus, so-called the Dragon Line. It's a shuttle bus free of charge in the Old Town, so you can just hop in, hop off. So to encourage people to just using the public transportation. We also now designing the robot coconut collectors. We don't have that robot yet that I just referenced from the website from Italy. But the problem in the Old Town is because the tourists go to the Old Town and go to Phuket, they love coconut. And they don't bring as souvenir back home. Right? They just put it there. And in one bin, they have 6 coconut is heavy enough for one person already. There's no way our Phuket, so our foundation signed MOU with the science program under Ministry of Education to produce the first time the coconut robot collectors. So it's supposed to be on road by the time that Phuket hosts GSTC 2026, okay? So you can see our real coconut robot collectors later on. And again, we want to make sure that we have all the standards recognized. So instead of going to, as again Randy said yesterday, there are now in the world 300 standards in the world. So we choose one that GSTC recognized, which is so-called Green Hotel Plus. So we signed the MOU with the Climate Change Department under the Natural Resources Ministry to facilitate the hotels in Phuket to get recognized and accredited by Green Hotel Plus. We have 4. We want to be 600 in 2 years. That's a very ambitious goal. And we want to do, again, not just a checklist for hotel. We want to embed the sustainable DNA into the hotel. That's a very challenging task for us. This is our initiative. Phuket is an island. We want to do the coral restoration. But instead of having the very ugly concrete underwater wall, we decided to have, again, Hanuman is from Ramayana myth in Thai culture and Indian culture. So we would install Hanuman, which is the monkey look like concrete for coral restoration. So there's 2 things, both things to do good. The first one, the coral will have restored, and the second one, the diving the diver will want to go there, and now we want to add up more like Ramayana math into that area, so they like open underwater world museum later on. Again, when we say about sustainability, it's not just an E. Many people talk about environmental perspective, but actually they have two words embedded. It's social and governance. So our foundation actually pretty much promoting the cultural. This is the Phuket Vegetarian Festival, which is having the honor to win the World Festival from Korea, which is pretty much facilitating from our Thailand Convention Bureau in Thailand. And also we want to having our Peranakan Festival, which again has been giving the award for the World Festival. To make sure that people like local, they are involved and engaged to that. And the last one is about education. We thought education is, if you manage it wrongly, is a ticking bomb into society. So we want to do two things. The first one, we want to make sure there's no zero dropout in Phuket. And the second one, we want to make sure that there are education equalities in Phuket in terms of access and in terms of quality. Otherwise, you have thriving in business, but you have social problems in the future. Well, I would say it's nothing that is perfect. We are actually learning by doing, and I think we can share some of our journey to all of you. And again, we're waiting you for the next year, GSTC 2026. Thank you, Khop Kun Kap.
Thank you very much. We can looking forward to see that coconut robot next year. And thank you very much, all of the panelists, just shared all the thoughts. I do see you have some answers to the questions I raised for sure, but I do see a lot of new questions popped up in the Slido as well. So the first one, can I read? I think there was a first question coming from Tar, if I got the name right. Tar, where are you? Because you've been asking really good questions. Thank you very much, Tar. So it's a question for Amy, actually. So what is the status of methodology development by Nature Positive Initiative, or SBTN? And I think we'll cover that before this topic. And then suggestions for the MP tools for hospitality industry. Amy, could you answer that, please?
Sure. So I assume you're actually asking about the Nature Positive Initiative, not what I presented the report, because there's the Nature Positive Initiative is separate from the Nature Positive Ocean Pathways report that I presented, and the scientists who were part of developing our report actually are part of the Nature Positive Initiative. So there's a lot going on globally, and that's one of the things we are working to do, is to stay connected and make sure that there's coordination among the many different efforts that are happening at the global scale. So that the report that I put up on the screen is available online on our website. I didn't get the QR code on there. Sorry about that. But you can Google it and it should come up. Let me know if not. So that is really, we call it a pathways report because it gives sort of a structure to recommendations that are fairly detailed in each of the sector chapters. Coastal tourism is one of the sector chapters. It actually is broken into, I think, 4 different pieces within it. So there's just a lot of information in there and a lot of references that we then, in the next stage, really do hope to turn into something that's really useful from a measurement perspective and from a case study perspective. So like I said, that's the sort of V2 of that. SBTN, from the oceans side of things, is the seafood methodology launched in March. Steps 1 and 2, I didn't present on SBTN because it's hard to present it quickly, but steps 1 and 2 of SBTN are generalized across the different kind of biomes that SBTN is organized within, and those are available to get started on. You know, if you've already started materiality assessments for CSRD, this is a great opportunity to figure out ways to leverage that for better things. And tools for the hospitality industry, I would say that there are a lot of tools within the report, but that's also what I feel like is sort of nascent in our approach, is to really make some of what's in there relevant and real. So also happy to chat with anybody about ideas you might have for that.
Thank you, Amy. And Tar, just a quick things for the SBT, and they do offer a high commodity, high impact commodity list, and then you can actually check on that as well as for the hospital industry to start over. So thank you very much. We have another question from Pata. So and then this is a question for Kelly, I think. And then how do you decide when economy gains conflicts with environmental limits on Sentosa?
Yeah.
Kelly, please.
Thanks, Koko. I think there's another question on why do we invest in sustainability when there's financial investments, which is actually not insignificant. One of the thoughts about island destination is about sustainability is everybody's responsibility. One of the key things when we look at some of the reports and analysis by our water agency, the effects of carbon could raise the sea level by 1.15 meters at the end of the century. And what does that mean? The beaches on Sentosa will be gone, right? So that's one of the key long-term view that we take. The investment is necessary. We really need to change the attitudes. We need to have policies in place. We need to tell our properties on the island that it's an imperative. If not, by the end of the century, the island would not be there anymore. So that's one of the questions I want to answer. And when we look at the economic gains and versus the environmental limits, they are not always in conflict with each other. Because if you want to view it as in conflict, it will be. But the truth is actually when we develop and we maintain a certain percentage of the nature, the greenery and the blue and the brown being the heritage on the island, that itself is a sanctuary that can be adding value to the tourism economy as well. It could be less people visiting, but it could be higher value. So from a net impact, it actually works out to be the same, right? A lot of the world population is an aging population, and one of the key things we were thinking about how sustainability and long-term longevity and wellness could be the next frontier of tourism as well. It is now no longer about visiting the place, doing Instagrammable shots. Now people are talking a lot about the authentic experiences that you go to a destination and experience. And perhaps in the future, we talk about longevity, we talk about regenerative in terms of your own personal well-being, your health. So these are things that we think about in the long term. So they are not always in conflict with each other. And in Sentosa, we looked at the limits and we will not pass those limits as well. Because you can actually get the short-term gains from the economic standpoint, but I think in the longer term, you may be losing out a lot more. I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you very much for that. I think importantly, as I think Sentosa has a lot of incentives as well at the same time, right? If you're doing something great and you get incentives from the government as well. So next question from Desmond is for BK. I think BK, you mentioned that China and India, we're sorry to hear that from China, and seems to make up the majority of the tourists for Phuket. And are there any plans to engage them to shift their mindset on sustainability?
Well, I think first we have to be a good host first, to make sure that we are actually perform in the way of sustainability is, and they are visitors that would follow suit. If we not performing on as a good host on having a great sustainability mindset, it's not only China or Indian, and anyone else would not actually follow the suit. So the first one, I think Phuket people should be a good host by showing the example, a good example for sustainability. The second one, I think we've been discussing a lot lately in Phuket that we want to have value over volume tourism. And the person actually traveling from either from China or from India now, we kind of to see the trend that they are more responsible traveler. Not all of them, but we see a potential of them being responsible traveler. And the last one, I would say, while we actually discussing about sustainability, and there are a lot of pressure to all of us to bearing the responsibility not just for our generation, for the next generations. And then that pressure actually falling to everybody in the world right now. They have been aware of the climate change. They've been aware of those circumstances that actually challenge them. So we see a positive potential for Chinese and Indian traveler. But we will start from ourselves first. That's the most important thing, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think you just mentioned about the underwater museum, which I think is a very good example to how to engage with the travelers and then make them to actually contribute something good about the destination. Thank you, BK. So moving on to the next question from Atar again. So it's a question for Litia. Great. Do you have example of protective shoreline action that were done by FHTA, please?
FHTA doesn't actually do take their sustainable actions, but I can talk to actions taken by our members. One example is Muscat Cove has invested in replanting, reforestation of the native species. And island ecosystems, they're very susceptible for soil erosion, habitat degradation, invasive species. So what they have done is during COVID, when there was a pause in those high traffic areas, they started the process of replanting the species that were native to the island in the areas where they would possibly make the most impact in terms of stabilizing these areas that the erosion was becoming evident.
Yes, continuing the question, Litia, because at your presentation you mentioned about the waste, and then there's very limited resources for recycling as well. There's a question for you again about how you manage the waste, such as plastic and other material, especially when the recycle limitation resources are limited.
Well, a lot of the resorts have now moved away from plastic. What they have replaced it, though, with is glass containers, glass bottles, and that has produced another problem with glass waste. One of the innovations that resorts have invested in is investing in grinders. And so they're able to grind these down on island, and it produces a good silica that is used in the path and road maintenance, as well as a concrete for the hotels.
Interesting, very great. Moving on to the next question, I think it's for BK again. So how does Phuket manage tension between luxury tourism and the community-based sustainability?
I think you need to define luxury tourism first. It doesn't have to be like ultra-rich, staying up-class hotel all the time. I think the new definition of luxury, it means they probably stay in really luxury, elegant stay, but they want to be the local experience. And that's the bottom line of the luxury, because they want things that are happening in their hometown. So basically, I think that blend well together if you look at the experience. Let's say community-based tourism is more on experience, on the journey. So we try now very much to redefine the word luxury tourism instead of ultra, super rich, eat only Michelin 3-star. It's okay that we redefine the luxury into localizations experience. And if you look at that terms, it's blend well with our commodity-based tourism. For example, many people actually want to, let's say, having a privilege to own a yacht, and they want to, go out with a nice luxury yacht, but they want to eat local food. They catch a fish from the ocean. They want to eat something really local. They want to have experience locally. I think that's, again, in Thailand, we are fortunate to have a dedicated organization called DASDA, which is very good partner with GSTC, driving a lot of sustainable commodity-based tourism. And you can see the trend of this world now. People, let's say they go to Middle East, they want to be like camel rider, they want to be like Cherokee driver at all. They want to be like camel riders. They want to eat local, feel local, touch local. So in terms that you need to start from your new mindset, that luxury doesn't mean ultra rich and doesn't touch
the feet doesn't touch the earth. Yeah.
True. Thank you, BK. And I think, Amy, I do have a question for you as well, because you mentioned a lot about biodiversity, setting the goals and having a strategy. But what your advice would be for those SMEs who are just embark on the journey about biodiversity friendly or nature friendly? So for them in the hospitality industry, what your advice could be?
It's a great question. You said we had answers, but I don't know that I do. Is it on?
Maybe just press.
Okay. I mean, I think it is one of the most important questions that I don't have the answer to, really. But I think certainly when we're thinking about engaging in destinations, one of the most important things that in particular this experience brings home is that balancing in sort of a land seascape scale approach like that, balancing the stakeholders and the small operators, medium operators, large operators in terms of the power and the voices in the room is really critical. And that, I think there's work to do even with, I know GSTC is aware of this, but I think in general, writ large, the big known certification bodies are targeted toward, demand from other markets and much larger scale companies that can afford them. And so I think there's work to do to define the answer to that question better. And I think there's a lot of people working on that. I think certainly one thing that I continue to hear about is some really interesting stories here in Fiji around the sort of learning exchanges that are happening within Fiji, but also I think across countries that there's a recognition that to scale those for community benefit and for lots of other reasons, that could be a really interesting opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Litia, do you want to share something about that one? Okay, right. So we do have an interesting question here from Pata. So to all, if you had to ban one word from all sustainability reports, what would it be? Great. So Pata, are you in that room? Right, that's a great one. Okay, Kelly, so maybe starting from you.
If I have my way, I'll ban all sustainability reports. And for good reason, because it means that we do need to track, because the world has changed and sustainability has become a way of life and how people live, work and play. And that's my wish. It's banning the sustainability report altogether, because it has become really ingrained in everyone's ethos on how they live life, right? And you don't need a sustainability report to govern and measure and change attitudes and change the approach towards how we interact with the environment. And true to my point, I think let's be an ally to the environment and live life to the fullest. That's my wish.
Great. Okay. Maybe Amy? Maybe.
I mean, one question I've actually had for all of you here, I think, that because our focus really is on nature and nature restoration in combination with climate resilience, evaluations and work, and I think about sustainability reports and the role they play. I know how complicated they are, but I think, measurement is going to really be important. And so one particular thing that, especially as we're here and we're talking about development on coastlines, and when you think about the kind of ecosystems that we've been talking about and the value that mangroves and coral reefs and seagrass beds and marshes, let's not forget them, they usually are further north than here, but provide, and then thinking about development and how we can really be better about valuing those natural assets and having that value work its way into business processes. So it's not banning one word, but what I feel often is missing is, a land conversion number, for instance, that there's a target against that, particularly in biodiverse rich and risky areas. And so to me, there's something around, really recognizing the value of the land and respecting that as a part of the development process, and then reporting out, yes, again, about how that's going and how that's playing out.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Litia, if there's one word you want to ban, what's that going to be?
There's actually two words.
Okay.
And that is global targets, I think, in terms of what I would ban from sustainability reports. And just because everybody's different, everybody's priorities, everybody's issues with sustainability are different, and having global targets in terms of where we want to be in certain spaces takes away from learning about the local context and what really matters to the people in the place, and dealing with those matters and improving in those areas in particular, as opposed to just trying to reach global targets without taking that local context into consideration.
Great. Okay.
I'm about to say the same.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, that's about to say the same because it's with the same reason as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since you have the mic, I think there's a lot of questions about coconut robot.
Yeah,
People are very interested in that
coconut.
particular one. Can you explain a little bit more about the current scale, the plan, who we are going to collaborate, and maybe the budget?
Right. Okay. The pain from Phuket come from we have the data from in the old town we have Sunday market, and before we coming to the detail, the question is how many people in the Sunday market. So we have the big data with the kind of technology to count the heads of the whole Sunday market. It turned out that we have the average about 20,000 people per day.
Wow.
In the old town, walking around, and it's unique counting. So when you having the line, you walk past and you come back, it count you as a unique head already. So 20,000 means we estimate about just 1% of 20,000 people having coconut.
Wow.
That's a huge number already. And each coconuts in Thailand, because we are a tropical island, tropical country, the coconuts grow so well like Fiji. So it's big coconut, not small one. So it's weighs like half a kilo for each coconut. So, imagine to say at least 200 or 300 coconut per day, so you have a lot of, almost a ton. And no way human being like us, we just carry it all day for a ton for coconut. That's why we come up with if not human, then robot. Okay. So the robot that we're designing, if you look at them, it's driverless golf cart. Let's say on that, you have a golf cart, but it's driverless with all IoT technology. And there was be like a space for people who just, throw the coconut into that. They can also put the coconut into nearby the bin, because we have designated area that driverless robot will just go there on the IoT point and pick up all the coconut that left out. Or we want in the future, if that actually happening, people would just not hold the coconut shell, waiting for the robot coming and then put to the robots instead of put somewhere else. The cost is about, so far as I understand, because we asked Ministry of Education to innovate it. It's about half a million baht. Convert to, let's say, how much? 500,000 baht, 500,000 baht in Thailand. The guys help me out. 20,000 US dollars per one robot. Okay. Well, that accommodate about one round, accommodate about 25 to 30 for one round. So if that robot, rotating like every half an hour, it would clean up all the coconut shelf in the old town, that's for sure. And again, there's a question that we're not actually collaborating with hotels. The reason is not because each hotel will need to take care on their own waste. So basically, they produce the waste, they take care of their own waste. But because the old town is a public space, when they buy one coconut from one shop, they're not just drinking at that shop and put the coconut back. They walk around And once they walk around, they finish coconut, they put somewhere nearby the bin. Yeah.
But how do you deal with the shells after you collect all of the coconut?
We actually have worked with university in Bangkok to turn that to coal char, and and that can export later to European countries. We've been researching that already sometimes. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. Interesting story. So we are running out of the time. Let's give a round of applause to all of our speakers here. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Before we go, I do have a notice from here. My colleagues asked me to read this. So before you leave, if you've booked your airport transfer when completing your online profile, please take a moment to stop by at the registration desk to reconfirm your departure date and pickup location. Thank you very much. And now it's lunchtime. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.